There he is. Senator Cruz, welcome, sir, after the State of the Union, and welcome in general, and it's good to see you. So I just want to start with this Kudlow musing, you know? Sticking to your guns, sticking to your guns, sticking to the, I'm calling them America First principles, okay? Trumpian principles, they could be Cruzian principles, their leadership. You've got people like John Thune blasting Democrats left and right. I just love it. I mean, I'm not kidding. I just love it. My hat's off to them. I don't know if this stuff can get passed or not, but it seems to me if you're going to beat history and you're going to win the midterm elections in the House and the Senate, sticking to the guns and sticking to these America First values is the way to do it, Senator Cruz. You know that? I think it's the absolute best strategy, and that's what Trump did Tuesday night, didn't he? He stuck to his guns. He didn't sound like some wussy rhino Republican. He was Trump from beginning to end, wasn't he, sir?
Undoubtedly, and I will say, I am confident in all of recorded history, Donald Trump will never be described as some wussy rhino Republican. That is not a collection of words that will ever be applied to the president. Look, the speech was magnificent. It was a litany of success.
Oh, yes.
That's what was so powerful, is the underlying records. Larry, you and I have been doing this a long, long time. I've been to 14 State of the Union addresses. The successes that President Trump laid out in the last year, in 2025, we have accomplished more, President Trump and his administration and a Republican Senate and a Republican House, than any year since I've been serving in the Senate. And you look at the success, from a 99% drop in illegal border crossings to a 20% drop in murder rates all over the country, to a 20% drop in drug overdose deaths all over the country. You look at the economy, gas prices dropping from $6 a gallon to $2 a gallon. That is a staggering victory for the American people. And then you look at two provisions in the Trump tax cut that we passed last year, both of which I authored, which I think are generationally transformative. Number one, school choice, the biggest and boldest federal school choice plan to ever be enacted. It is going to help millions of kids escape failing schools and have hope and opportunity. And number two, the Trump accounts, which President Trump talked about at length, that is going to help every child in America experience the benefits of compound growth, and it is going to make a whole new generation of capitalists. That's a record of success. That's what President Trump was talking about Tuesday night.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, you have always been a political man of principle.
Thank you.
No, you always have, as long as I've known you. And not everybody can say that, and the GOP has a history. We don't need to go through. We don't need to go through it. But they have a history of backing off when Democrats push back, and that's not happening now. The way I see it, look, there may be compromises in legislative terms. I don't know. We'll talk about that in a second. But in the basic beliefs, stuff you're talking about, things like school choice, things like giving newborns a piece of the rock that can change their entire lives from poverty to prosperity. These are earth-shattering. The one big, beautiful bill was an earth-shattering piece of legislation that everybody... You know what I would say, Senator, the thought occurs to me, I don't know who said this, or maybe the president said this, but basically, it's as like he gave the entire GOP what I'm going to call the new Trump GOP, but he gave the entire Republican Party its midterm election talking points on Tuesday. He gave them this, as you say, pointing out the successes, pointing out some of the issues that, you know, we're going to fight for in this session of Congress, such as the SAVE Act. We're going to talk about that in a minute, and the attack on ICE and DHS and so forth. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's like he gave everybody their talking points, and they weren't wussy talking. They were, let's get this done one talking point.
Yes.
Look, the whole thing, the one big beautiful bill last year was a miracle. It was, let's face it, it was not an easy thing to do, but it was piloted through by strong leadership in both houses of Senate and strong Republican leadership, including yourself. I'm just saying, this is a new thing, and it's very interesting to me. I'm just saying, what is principled politics works, Senator Cruz. Compromising, wussy, rhino politics never worked. Never worked. And if the GOP has learned nothing from Mr. Trump but that, they will have learned something that's very important.
Look, from your mouth to the ears of every Republican member of Congress, I'll tell you what I tell newly elected senators, newly elected House members, is just do what you said you would do. Just do what you promised the voters. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. And the speech Tuesday, another way to look at it is promises made, promises kept.
Yes.
And I got to say, Tuesday, the whole country, anyone watching that speech, saw a very clear contrast between strong, bold leadership for America and real results. Your families are safer, you have greater prosperity, the world is safer on one hand, versus angry and extreme partisanship. And the moment of the entire speech that I think will go down as the most significant moment is when he turned to the Democrats and said, here's your chance. Stand if you agree with this, that our first responsibility should be to fight for American citizens and not illegal aliens. And every single Democrat stayed seated. That picture will appear in 1 million campaign ads because every Democrat said, who are you fighting for? The American people or illegal aliens? And 100% of them said the Democrat Party is all about illegals and it's not about you. That didn't used to be the case even a few years ago, but it shows Trump derangement syndrome is real. And they've decided they are more bound to the crazy activists than they are trying to make a difference in the lives of the people they're supposed to be representing.
You got these crazy left-wingers, you can see them mouthing, they're dropping F-bombs at the president, okay? And then F-bomb signs, stickers on their dresses and lapels and stuff like that. Utter nonsense, just stuff that's just, you're right, it's going to be in ads throughout the whole election campaign. Good. Senator Cruz, let's just talk a little bit about specifics here now. What happens with the DHS? I mean, Senator Thune, I could tell, he was very strong when he came on this show last night. He was annoyed. He was angry. Are we going to have? I mean, this isn't just about ICE. Although I want to get to ICE in a minute. This is about This is about the airports. This is about the Coast Guard. This is about the Secret Service. This is about FEMA. These blue state Democrats, they don't want to sign on to this. They're defunding FEMA, whether they realize it or not. Meanwhile, the blue states in the Northeast are taking the worst snow blizzards and snowstorms, dangerous stuff that they've seen in decades. So what sense does that make? So now the question is there going to be a second reconciliation bill, a slim recon bill, a thin reconciliation bill? How do you read it, Senator?
Look, I hope so. I'm actively urging my colleagues, let's take up and do a reconciliation bill again. And for folks at home, what does that mean, a reconciliation bill? It is a procedure that lets you get around the Senate filibuster, that lets us pass legislation with just 50 votes, which means Democrats can't block it. And it's how we passed the biggest tax cut in American history. It's how we passed the biggest school choice program in American history. It's how we passed the biggest investment in border security in American history. It's how we passed the Trump accounts, the biggest investment in our kids in American history. All of that, we used reconciliation to pass so the Democrats wouldn't block it. We should do it again this year, and I'm actively making the case to my colleagues. I hope that's what we end up doing. Your question about DHS funding, look, the Democrats are so captive to their left-wing extreme that they are forcing a shutdown. The Department of Homeland Security has more than 200,000 employees. By the way, ICE, which the Democrats have decided they hate, is about 21,000 employees. So it's less than 10% of the Department of Homeland Security, and ICE is fully funded. So their shutdown is not actually impacting ICE, but you know who they are not paying? They're not paying FEMA. They're not paying the TSA at airports. They're not paying the Coast Guard. This is what the Democrats are doing. And by the way, TSA, if you're getting on an airplane, people are already experiencing delays. They're feeling the pain. The last shutdown, the Schumer shutdown that we saw last year, right before the election, was the longest shutdown in American history. It was 43 days. Here's what one Democrat staffer told a reporter. He said, "We will keep this shutdown, quote, until planes start falling from the sky."
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
That's
wow.
how extreme they are. And so we're going to keep fighting to fund the government and to pay the Coast Guard, to pay TSA, to fund FEMA. But I am very concerned that our Democrats are so radical that they may try to keep it shut down for the entire rest of the year. I think that tragically is a very real possibility.
Well, you know, from my point of view, Senator, I listen to everything and I try to be fair. But really, the Democratic Party is still the open borders party. It is still the open borders party. I don't believe it's changed. And I love what you said. Deporting murderers reduces murders. How about that for Cruzian logic? I like that very, very much, sir. And last one, I want to ask you, if you have a second reconciliation bill 2.0 of some kind, can you get the voting rights, the new voting rights in there? We got to have a photo ID, proof of citizenship, etc. You think you can get that in a reconciliation bill?
So I think that would be very challenging to put in a reconciliation bill because there are strict rules in statute about what you can do on reconciliation and what you can't. And the basic distinction is it has to be budgetary and not policy. And so, look, I am an original sponsor of the Save America Act. I am fighting night and day to pass it. I am urging my colleagues to force the Democrats to do a talking filibuster, which is using the Senate rules to make them not just simply raise a finger and say, I filibuster, but make them stand and talk and talk and talk. Think Jimmy Stewart in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, or as you know, the 21 hours I stood and filibustered against Obamacare. We should make them do that. We should fight. And I'm trying very hard to bring my colleagues together for us to all do that together.
I like that. By the way, he was a Princeton guy. Don't forget, Jimmy Stewart, Princeton guy.
True enough.
Senator Ted Cruz, thank you for your time, sir. Terrific stuff, really.
Thank you, Larry.
Hope you come back soon.